Well, hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is your host, Hunter McWaters. It's good to be with you guys. And this week, I'm going to do my third and final podcast, that has something to do with this Idaho bear hunt. I know you guys have been hearing a lot about it, but I figure it's better to get all this stuff out now while the hunt is fresh, while people are still bear hunting and stuff like that. So this one's not all about bear hunting, but on this trip that I just went on in Idaho, like I just said, is I was with Mark Livesay, Ryan Lampers, Brad Hunt, and then Ryan brought a young gun with us named Chiam LOYD. And none of us, he was kind of uncharted, untested, like I said, he's a younger guy. He's done some hunt films, but never done one this length. He didn't even have all the gear. He, was using a lot of borrowed gear and stuff like that. And so anyway, I wanted to get him on the podcast for a couple of reasons. One, because this was a new experience for him, and I wanted to hear about it through his eyes. He also was filming, so we had that in common. So we talked a little bit about that. But also, like I said, since me and Mark were hunting together and these guys were together, there was not much crossover. So I kind of wanted to get the story from him as to how things went down on their hunt. And hadn't been able to get a chance to get a hold of Brad or Ryan because they're still out kind of doing other hunts and stuff. So I figured I'd grab Chiam, get him on the podcast, and talk about this hunt. And then after this week, we'll move on from this stuff. But like I said, I really wanted to recap these hunts well because it was a really cool trip and learned a lot. And I think people are still in the thick of bear season, so you'll enjoy this one. And even if not, there's good stuff, like I said, about filming and just about Chiam's story. And he's a really cool guy. His name Chiam means life in Hebrew. His dad gave it to him. They're a spiritual family, and so obviously I think I've used this verse before, but the verse that just came to mind for this one was when Jesus says, "I've come that you may have life and life in abundance." And Chiam definitely has that. He dealt with some adversity on this trip. He had not enough food for a couple days. Long story that we get into in this show, but he just didn't quit, and even when he was literally on the verge of passing out on one of the pack outs. So he's a great dude, tough guy. He's funny, fun to talk to, very talented videographer. So looking forward to doing more work with him in the future and just seeing what he does, because I know he'll do big things just because of his skills and his attitude and all that. So enjoy this episode with Chiam. Do want to mention again, as always, please leave me ratings and reviews on Apple and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. That's major. So if you want links to, or if you look in the description field, you'll find links to discount codes, Two Vets tripods, some stuff I use all the time on these hunts, whether you're glassing or filming. Great American made, veteran owned company, HQ5, use that code and you'll save some money on a great tripod. We got Heather's Choice, use the code Hunter's Quest there, save some money and support the show. And then always Initial Ascent, if you're looking for a great pack. We ran these packs on this trip and they just performed beautifully. And Joe and Dennis are awesome people. So if you use the code QUEST at Initial Ascent, you will save some money and you will help me out and help the show out. So without further ado, let's jump into this podcast with Chiam LOYD. Enjoy. All right. Welcome to the Hunter's Quest podcast. I'm here with my guest today, Chiam LOYD. Me and Chiam met on this bear hunt we just did out in Idaho, and welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here, and it was super good getting to know you. I mean, you get to know people a little bit better way out there in the middle of nowhere. So,
yeah, and we'll get into this later, but we kind of split off into different groups, so we didn't get to hang out too much. But I will say, you have by far the best looking video setup / background of any guest I've ever had.
I try to have that little bit of edge over everybody, that extra 20-minute setup, pays off. So yeah,
no,
maybe people will think I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had other videographers and photographers on, and but nobody's had anything look quite that good. So Good
You
job.
got to step up your game, guys. Like now I set the playing field, so now
I
I got to
know.
compete.
And you're making me look bad because I was just telling Kyle, like, I'm in the middle of a move, and so I don't even have my backdrop up. Like, I got crap everywhere. My little home office studio is just a mess. But good news is, when I do move, I'll be. I got like a actual legit like nice size room I can use for a studio and an office. So I'm looking forward to setting that up.
There you go. Well, you're just running with the authentic right now. Like it's
Right.
true to
This is
life.
just
Yeah.
real. Down and
That's
dirty.
right.
I got sick kids coming back from a trip, in the middle of a move, everything going on. So, but anyway, man, it's good to. I'm glad you could join me, man. I just wanted to just kind of introduce folks to you. Just and also, like I said, we met each other, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time together. So, get to know you a little bit better, and also kind of go over. Like I said, we split off into groups. You and Brad are with Ryan, and I went with Mark. So I don't really know much about how y'all's hunt went. So just kind of wanted to hear, how the hunt went, and also, how this trip was through your eyes, because you're great and experienced videographer, but you don't have, and I'm not saying I do either, but you don't have a ton of backcountry hunting, or at least this length of trip
Right.
experience filming. So I want to get kind of your perspective on that too.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those things. Like everyone was like kind of mother henning me before I went. Bryce with Peaks was like worried that I was just going to be dead in the woods somewhere. Lampers would just leave me and he'd never see me again. So he was making sure I got all my gear, and I'm, from the southern area of the hunting world. So growing up, hunting was just sitting in a stand and shooting
Yep.
a whitetail that walked by.
Same
And
here.
you can be eating southern food and in southern shape to do that kind of stuff. But this kind of deal up here is a totally different ball game, and I've been introduced to it in increments. But now I think I've been baptized a little bit,
Oh
going
yeah.
with Lampers and Brad. Those guys are freaks of nature. Like they just make you mad. You look up and they're 50 yards ahead of you on an incline that's past 45 degrees, and you're just like, man, and I'm a young guy, I'm like in decent shape.
Yeah.
And they're just making me look silly, and to me they're old. So
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. So you're
but
26, is that right?
yeah, I just turned 26 the day before we left, actually.
Yeah. And dude, the funny
Yeah.
thing about Brad is like, Brad doesn't even work out. Like,
Oh, I know.
like guys like so for me, I'm saying, I come from the Southeast, and I've been on a journey of like training and fitness to like be able to do this stuff. But Brad, like, I feel like guys that grew up doing this and like grew up in the mountains and just like were just born into this, like
Yeah.
Brad doesn't even train, but like I could probably destroy Brad in a CrossFit workout, but that dude can straight up pack, meat and hike all day long.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about being raised in that atmosphere where I'm pretty sure one of Brad's legs is longer than the other because he's always walking on the side of a mountain since he was a kid. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's like got this deformation that makes him like really good at like side hilling. Um, but yeah, that dude, I mean, just growing up in that, and he was kind of
Yeah.
talking about a little bit of his background. Just that was his playground, was the
Yeah.
stuff that we look at and we're like, yeah, I'm not going up there. And that's what he was crawling up as a kid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure, man. So, but yeah, going back a little bit. So, I've been planning on doing this trip for a while. I spent some time with Brian out in Utah, like back in February, and we kind of planned me going on this trip. And then I heard kind of last minute that you were coming, and you were kind of an unknown. Like you said, like, no one knew exactly what was going to happen. And like, I remember like somebody said, like Mark said something like, yeah, we don't know, man. Like, he might be running back to the truck after the first day. We don't know. But
I like that Mark impersonation. That's pretty close. Yeah.
it's more like this. He might be running back to the truck. Um,
Mark's gonna kill you if he sees this.
oh no, it's okay.
Uh,
But no, but I don't know. I saw you at the trailhead, and I was like, he's gonna be fine. Like, he'll be fine. And besides, it's
Come
not
on, man.
like,
Like, everybody that I've met, and I've done a few things, and like I have a backpacking background. Like I've loved fly fishing since I first came up here, like my junior year of high school. And I came up every summer after that. And I would go out for like 30 days at a time, getting resupplied by
Mm,
pack mules. Like I loved the backcountry aspect of things, but you're getting different type of
for
scenarios when
sure.
you're packing out meat. But I just look 5'7". I look like a kid. I'm very young looking. So like I'm just unassuming. And I
Yeah.
think I always surprise people because I have done this kind of stuff before. I don't have a lot of quit in me. And so it's always like people are like, I don't know about this guy.
Yeah.
And then it takes at the end of the trip. So like people are really standoffish at first, thinking that I'm just like some kind of, there's this stigma around camera guys in general that haven't been in this
Yeah.
world that you're like, yeah, those guys, camera guys. But I,
Well,
I
plus
take
I think
pride
they
in,
had. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Take pride in what?
oh, I just taking pride in, I like the fact that people are like, yeah, this guy, look at his body. Like he looks like he eats Taco Bell every day. And then being able to keep up with those guys, like I like that. Like, and I do eat Taco Bell. So
Yeah.
they're miserable. I'm happy every day eating Taco Bell, but then I'm miserable on the mountain. So there's trade-offs.
Okay. Well, I gotta say, you can probably do that now. When you in 10 years, when you're my age, you might
Yep.
not be able to get away. Hey, you might. I don't know. Maybe you're a superhuman freak of nature, but probably you won't be able to get away with that for too much longer. But I think also Mark had only seen you once, like at that bear summit or something, and I think you
Yeah.
were like probably like dressed business professional, business casual or whatever, and
Yeah.
he didn't. Like you said, he just was judging on appearance and stuff. So, but you did
Yeah.
great, man. And I know, like I said, so my first time filming ever was with Dan Staten from Elk Shape, and your first time, well, not first time, but you know what I mean. Your first big backcountry trip
Yeah.
like this was with Ryan Lampers. So that's pretty cool to have on your resume, and kind of even just for yourself, your own confidence, just to be like, if I can do it with these guys, like, I
Right.
remember coming back from that first trip with Dan. I was like, if I can keep up with Dan, I think I can pretty much keep up with anybody. I think the same goes for you with Ryan and Brad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those guys are just kind of known for just murdering people that are new on the trail. Like they're gonna leave you behind. And there was, splitting off. I mean, the parts that you don't see is like I stopped for a shot, and when Brad's in hunting mode, like Brad's like going, like he's like leading the pack, like ready to go. He's in that zone. And I think that's what makes Brad unique too, is he grew up hunting as well
Hmm.
in this hemisphere of the world. And so he knows what he's doing on both ends, in front of the camera and behind it. So when he's in the zone, they're like, I'm getting a shot and I'm looking and I rewatch the shot and I look up and they're just like gone. And so I'm like literally following tracks, and like thankfully, like you have to glass a lot in bear hunting, because like I'm just I adapted a little bit, because most people are like, they see you taking a shot, they'll kind of like, do a
Sort of
little
wait
bit
for
of
you.
posing
Yeah.
or whatever, not these guys. Like you get the shot and you don't get it and then they're gone. So that was a little bit of a adaptation for me, just being able to keep up with those guys, because you better be like recording while walking and, just be
Yeah.
ready to go. So
Yeah. It's very much live action, documentary
yeah,
style, literally run and gun. Like they don't,
yeah,
there's really none of the, all right, let me run ahead and get this shot of you doing this, or like look back, it's none of that. It's all very real, and that's their style, and that's cool.
mhm.
Um, and I gotta say, I see your boots behind you. And that
Yes.
was one thing going back to the trailhead. Like, were those brand new when we started?
I had probably put 20 miles on
Okay,
them
good. All right.
in like 3 days before we left. I mean, the
Yeah.
Crispies are supposed to be like no break in or whatever, but
Are those guides? Are those crispy guides?
yeah. I
Those
actually
things take some break-in.
those they were great for me. I had no blisters, no anything.
Good.
I was golden. That was my first step into, you know, Bryce was pushing me to, Lampers was pushing me to get some kind of like, the Ferrari of the hunting shoe. And I was
Yeah.
like, man, almost $500 on some shoes. Like, I mean, I see sneakerheads buying like Jordans for $500, but I was like, boots?
Yeah.
But anyways, I am so glad that they forced my hand and got me to get those. I wouldn't have been able to do it with anything else that I've
Yeah.
used in the past. So
I mean, your
yeah.
footwear on this kind of trip is
Oh,
crucial.
crucial. Yep.
And I remember, so when we got to the trailhead, I didn't know anything about you either. I figured you'd be fine, but the one thing I did, I looked at your boots and they looked brand new. And I was like, surely
Yeah.
these guys did not bring him out here without like breaking those in at least. And I was like, dude, you want some, I said, you want some Luco tape? And you're like, nah, I'm good. And I was like, he's going to get blisters, but you had already figured that out. So, that's
Well,
good, man.
in your defense, I didn't know what leukotape was at the time. Like I
Yeah.
just never heard of it. So I was like, I guess not. I'm good.
You were like, no, I'm good. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I didn't even know what it was. And I
Okay.
didn't want to be like, what is leukotape? Like right there in front of everybody at the beginning of the trip. So
That's funny. No, I mean, that stuff saved my life. Anyway, moving on. And so I have a uniquely shaped foot, and for whatever reason, most crispy boots just do not work for me. And I went on my first trip ever in a pair of crispy guide boots, and they were actually, this is just to show how inexperienced I was. They were like a size too big, and oh my gosh, my feet got destroyed. But I think I hunted the whole like second and third day in Crocs. But
always
anyway,
have the Crocs.
dude,
What are
always,
you
yeah.
running now?
So now I'm using Hanwag. I had somebody. I did a lot of research and came across someone recommended Hanwag. And I did a bunch of research and I found one called a Tatra Light. And then Trail at Go Hunt actually recommended those. So I was like, well, if I found them and somebody recommended them, I'm gonna give them a try. So they're similar to like a Laponia, but then I got these. If you can see right back here, I'm gonna try these out. They're a little higher and a little stiffer because I got a big hunt coming up next year in Alaska that I need a little higher boot for. I'm gonna try those out. Those are Schnee's Timberlines, I think.
Yeah. I actually popped in the Schnees when I was looking at boots. Weird. Everybody's got to go through that trial and error. Everyone's got different feet. But I went into Schnees, not a single boot that Schnees made. It was so weird. I would take a few steps just in trying them on in the lobby, and all of the weight, it would transfer all the weight to my big toe and off of everything else. And like within 5 steps, it like just hurt my big toes on both foot every time I took a step, every single boot. And I was like, I hope this isn't just like the nature of the beast with hunting boots, you know? And so I stumped everybody. They had 4 people come out, had the manager come out, like they could not figure it out. They've never seen it, tried insoles. And so I just went over to Sportsman's here in Bozeman and picked up some Crispies and didn't have that problem. And thankfully they worked for me. So I was pretty fortunate to have a good first hunt.
Yeah, everybody's foot is so different, and you can't, especially it sucks for me because I cannot go anywhere and just try on a pair of Crispies. Like I have to order like 3 different sizes and try them on and then return them. And so it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's definitely something you need to get figured out. Cause like I said, I bought those first ones cause I heard Crispies were good and I was like, oh yeah, just get them. And then, but they're so specific to your foot. But anyway, kind of a side note, but I did want to hear a little bit. You talked a little bit about you're from Texas, right?
Yep.
And so
903.
So just tell me a little bit about how you made it up to, because you're in Montana now, and how you kind of got into this world.
So I born and
And
raised
throw in a
the
little
East
bit of
Texas
how you
area.
got into film stuff too.
Okay. So born and raised in East Texas, the son of a basketball coach, who's the son of a basketball coach, and just grew up in that world. Dad didn't hunt. I didn't really have any figures in my life that hunted, but I just took a knack to it. So I just tried figuring it out on my own. I would ask for guns for my birthday. Of course, I was turned down until I was of the right age.
So you had no family members that hunted. You just had a natural attraction to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think my great grandpa. I just remember looking at pictures. My great grandpa, both of them were big hunters on my grandma's side and my grandpa's side, and I just remember seeing those pictures. And I mean, I think every young man has a tug towards the outdoors. A lot of the times because they don't know, they just don't want to pursue it, the fear of the unknown. But I remember seeing those pictures and hearing the stories and it's like, hey, I want to do this. And not to say that my dad didn't. My dad did like the, just the typical sit in the stand type scenario.
Okay.
I mean, I had a little bit of that, but I just remember as a third grader, I would just devour survival books. Like I wanted to know
Oh,
everything
cool.
about the outdoors. And so that was the shift, I guess. And I was probably in the gym less than my grandpa and my dad wanted.
Yeah.
But I didn't stand much of a chance in my professional basketball career being 5'7", and I knew that early on. Um, anyways, I just started to put more focus into trying to learn how to duck hunt, finding friends that duck hunted. And I actually was working on a little ranch near where we lived when I was in high school. And the owner had a problem with a lot of water moccasins.
Hmm.
And so I would take buddies and I would go out and we just shoot a bunch of water moccasins. It's just a
Nice.
really kind of swampy area. And I started filming that with a GoPro just because I thought it was cool. And everyone loved it. And so that kind of started the trend. And then I think my senior year of high school, we used the basketball game camera, just a crappy, like probably Amazon special, just your typical little handy cam. And we won a statewide competition.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't know how big of a deal it was, but people like showed up at our school with like this big check and we're like, whoa. And like, they like did a last minute assembly and we were all like, we didn't even, our science teacher made us do this. Like we really didn't even want to do it. We just went out, had fun. We are like, all right, well, we'll skip 3 periods to go film something, like whatever. And then
What'd you
like,
film?
it was just one of those typical like high school awareness deals about like texting and driving or whatever.
Okay.
And we just did like a dramatic twist on it. If I could find it, it would be awesome to see it. I know it's awful looking back at it now. But I just remember like editing that together and then like winning a state competition and watching the other people who like their schools did film, like they had film classes.
Oh,
And
wow.
we're just like a bunch of dudes that just happened to do it. And I was like, yeah, I could do this. And so I got a little bit more serious, started to like get into it a little more. And then I went to junior college and at this point I'd done a little bit of experience, worked for a few people, and decided to just do my own small town business doing real estate and weddings and commercials and, just the way a lot of people start.
Mm-hmm.
And it took off. I don't know how. I mean, I took out a loan against the only thing that I had, which was my truck. So that was a little nerve wracking. And I paid that loan off in a year. I mean, it did really well. I just hit it right, as sort of like as video was kind of becoming cheaper to access and people were realizing, oh, I need this for my website.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And then I was like, okay, I think this is for real. And so I decided to go to film school. And so I went to University of Central Arkansas and went to film school there,
Nice.
got into the creative narrative process. Met some great people. One of my first professors, Matthew Foss, had a production company there based out of Little Rock. And he pretty much like kind of hired me as like a DP as a freshman or sophomore, and I just kind of stepped into that role pretty early. He just loved the work that I did. And I guess having that experience from before put me a little bit ahead technically in front of a lot of the other students. So he was great and really kind of put me into a little bit more of the production world. Then I graduated and I was
Do you
like,
think you learned more in film school or in your wedding business?
That is a tricky topic because I would not, if I could do it again, I probably would not go to film school. My parents hate when I say this because they were all about, the college education,
Right,
and they were definitely helped me out along the way. But I think that experience in this industry, like no one cares that you have a degree if you can't show them a cool portfolio. I think you go to film school for the connections because a lot of the film world is about the connections. And what connections are you going to make in Conway, Arkansas? There's like, are you going to run into like Ron Howard in Arkansas? Like, no, you're not. If you went to like NYU or something like that, some kind of big film university where your classmates are like Spike Lee, it's a different story. But in Arkansas, where your classmates are like they work at Academy down the road. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't help your career much.
Yeah. I just
But
wanted to ask that
anyways,
because I didn't go to film school, but I learned, on the job. I
right.
was on a film crew for a TV show. We had like a crew of like 12 guys and 12 full-time videographers. That's how big this like production house was, CBN. And yeah, we would just go out. We traveled probably 3 weeks out of the month, just traveling, just doing interviews, reenactments, news events, just everything. And so anyway, I just feel like a lot of people that might want to get into this, some people are like, oh, I have to go to film school or whatever. But
Yeah.
a lot of times
YouTube
that real world,
University.
the real world experience is really where it's at.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, to that point, I think there's merits in both of those
Sure.
ways that you go. Um, I'll be the first to tell you to try to do it in the real world, um, and just get that experience. But also, I think that there's things to be said, like it's timing in your life too.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have that experience already under my belt and I was learning all those things, because I felt like I was just sitting through classes like, wow, ISO, wow, aperture, like, and all these kids are like taking notes and I'm like sleeping for the first 2 years in college. Had I been in that place where I was going in with no experience, all those basics are like invaluable, and it gives you a chance. Like you're living in dorms, you're having a good life, you're not worried
Mm-hmm.
about bills. So if you're at that point in your life and you can afford to go to college, I say go for it and
Yeah,
just soak it up. But if you're
I would
really
agree.
trying to jump into a career, the only way to do that is to start at the bottom, fetch coffee, and then work your way up.
Yeah.
Um, so, but anyways, yeah, towards the end of that, I was working on some bigger sets, and I just, as much as I love the creative process and narrative filmmaking, um, I hate it just as much as I love it. Um, it was it's one of those things where I knew I had to go somewhere other than where I grew up. Either way, I was going to go. So
Yeah.
I said, I can go to Cali, I can go to New York, I can start at the bottom, like I said, start fetching coffee, be a PA, work my way up the ladder. Production assistant for you hunters out there that don't know
Yeah.
anything about the filmmaking
And
world.
DP
It's
is
just,
director of photography. I was gonna say that earlier.
yeah, I forget to, everyone just kind of looks at me like Dr. Pepper, like what? um, but so I didn't really, that's not my scene. I didn't want to be living in a big city. I didn't want to be on that set life around the politics in New York. In California, I like to carry a gun around. I like to have 2 or 3 in my truck. So that wasn't going to work. And I just wasn't really about that scene. And so I said, I'm going to have to move either way. So then I kind of narrowed it down. I was like, I'm going to just hammer it down here, just doing what I can do, continuing to work for some of these production companies, doing freelance stuff. And so I said, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Alaska. And that's it. It's make or break. Either I get a
Nice.
job there or I stay here. And then I got offered a position to come up here and be the director of video for an outdoor app. And then, so I worked there for a year, got to make some wonderful connections. Lampers was in and out of the office. PEAX ended up sharing an office there. And Ryan Bassham was in and out of the office. So I made a lot of good connections in the industry. And then the app never launched. And so I was kind of just like out on my own. And that was pretty difficult because, used to having I took a pay cut coming up here to work like a 9 to 5, was behind the computer a lot less in the field. And then after that point, when I didn't really have anything going, I had no clients built up. It was kind of a decision. Do you tuck your tail and do you go back home to where it's comfortable and you've got clients and everything's ready to go? Or do you stick it out in this wild, beautiful place and make it happen? And so, of course, I call my dad and he makes me feel like a pansy for even wanting to come home. And and I knew deep down that I wasn't going to leave. I knew that I had to stick it out here. I just didn't want to, because
Yep.
then I'm not really embarrassed to say this, but I just had to do something. Like I had to make it here. And the quickest job that I could find was stocking shelves overnight at Albertson's grocery store.
Oh wow.
And what's crazy is that I just queued up a bunch of, I was like, outdoor, hunting, backcountry, and then Hunter's podcast comes up, the Hunter's Quest. So I'm listening to this dude without that, and this is like a month before we go on this trip,
That's funny.
and so like I'm listening to your podcast and stuff, and I'm like, ah, learning some stuff. And then you got into the rounds and the grains and getting your, your load right for shooting in the backcountry. And I just listened to that, and it was just words. Um, but
Yeah, that's one of the more technical episodes you listen to about like long range shooting. But anyway,
Yeah. But anyway, so I was listening to that podcast, and just, man, I was at definitely a low point in my life, because I'm 25 years old at the time. I've got a college degree, and I'm stocking shelves with high school
mm,
kids overnight. And that was tough mentally, but that was what I had to do. Like,
mm.
could I have gone back and just, sunk back into routine, made
Doing
decent money?
weddings.
Yeah. But I stuck it out, and things worked out really fast. It's crazy. Like, there was like a point where I was like, this sucks. And then next thing I know, Bryce at Peaks wants me to do some work with them. I'm doing work for Ryan Lampers and his Stealthy Hunter brand. And then just some other freelance opportunities come up. There's a lot of work out there. But sometimes it's just, you got to give that time
Yeah,
period. And I think everybody's kind of got that story where you got to push through. And I'm super happy that happened. Like, now I can say that. At the time, I absolutely hated
of
it. Like, I
course.
left
Yeah.
there every night, and I just wanted to punch things. Like, I was just angry at the world. Um, but it was super valuable, and now I'm doing what I love, and it
Yeah.
was great. So I think the biggest thing that I learned out of all that, though, is that it's not necessarily like you have to work hard, you have to know your craft, but I think I never believed this, but because everyone's like, it just happens. Like, there's just a point where it just happens. And I think putting yourself in the right positions and just
Hmm.
working hard, being trustworthy, being a nice guy, like just putting yourself there, like, hey, I'm here.
Hmm.
And nothing's going to happen for a while. You just got to be ready to stick it out. And people see that you're ready to work hard and all that. And so I
Hmm.
can say that that's true now, because if you just put yourself in that right position and stick it out, it's going to happen. Like, you just got to put the energy towards it.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so much of life is just showing up and, like you said, just being there, being trustworthy, making those connections, and sticking it out. That's big time. And, so yeah, man, that's really cool. And I'm with you too on like I was always drawn more to capturing live action stuff and like real emotion, real events. Like,
Yeah.
we did like, at work, we would do like, reenactments, like we see like someone telling a story on a show and then they like flashback and it's like, so we would do
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I was never really into that. But yeah, man, that's super cool that you were able to get in there and stick it out through that time. So your dad gave you some advice, huh, on not coming back home?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really close with my parents. And who I am as a person is thanks to them. But, my dad's always got that way of just making what's right, pulling it like, it's there, but he
Yeah.
pulls it out. And he just said, like, you are like so close to being Walter Mitty. If you've seen that movie, like Walter Mitty, like the guy is like struggling, and then he finds himself, and like all he does is go on adventures. And he is like, you're like, you have to push through this, because like you're at where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to stick it out. And he is like, life sucks,
Yeah.
but you got to deal with it. And I'm paraphrasing poorly, like,
Yeah.
because my dad said it better, but
Well, so many people quit right before the breakthrough. And
yeah, yeah,
there's so many like cliches we could say, but really, I mean, the whole thing about it's always darkest before the dawn is really true.
yep,
I mean, it's like, it's always looks the bleakest right before things change. And so just sticking it out there is big time. So, and your dad, you mentioned your dad named you Chiam, which is Hebrew
yeah.
for life, right?
Yes. Yeah. The breath of
And so,
God that he breathed into Adam, that is
yeah,
Chaim. It's
L'chaim.
supposed to be said on which you may hear like toast or whatever. Um, Not that many of you have probably ever been to a bar or bat mitzvah,
Yeah.
but and we're not
Oh, I
Jewish
have.
at all. But my dad's just a weird duck. I got my creative streak from him because he also took a lot of art classes in college and painted for a while, and he was in his artistic painting phase when they had me. So here I am
Nice.
explaining how to say my name to everyone till the day I die. But
Yeah. It was
I
like the
think
third day after I
importance.
met you, and I was like, wait a second. L'chaim.
Yeah,
I was like, that's what it
yeah,
is. So, but you said he's a man of faith too. Obviously, that's a
yeah.
biblical reference. So, did your faith, or I don't know I haven't asked you about it, but that's kind of one of the themes of the podcast. So,
Yeah.
is faith something that's a part of your life, and was that something that helped you kind of get through that dark time when you were waiting for that breakthrough?
Yeah, I think I mean growing up in Texas, Bible Belt, Southern Baptist was and my parents were always great. I always like to say my mom was too strict. But yeah, I mean they kept me in line. Everything was great. I think they did a really good job. And when and if I have kids, they're obviously going to be the role models that I look at. But yeah, I think I had a really good like father mother situation because my mom
Mm-hmm.
was super strict and like by the book and like everything's got to be this way. My dad was always like he's a man, he was a young man once, he's able to relate to me a little bit
Right.
and always like kind of the calm in the storm when me and my mom were butting heads. But yeah, no, it's always been, I think I went through a period in college where it kind of hit me, and not that I ever like just kind of lost faith entirely, but I went through a period where I think everyone should do this
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whatever you believe, but you can't just believe what your parents and everyone in the town you grew up in believe and just
Totally.
like continue it. Like
Totally.
I envy the people that can do that and never question it.
Yeah.
But if you have a question in your mind, like you have to believe things for yourself.
Yes.
And so coming to that age in college, like one day it's just like I woke up and I was like, I don't even know if I believe this for myself, like
Right.
not saying that it's not true. And I remember like not phrasing this delicately enough to my parents when we brought it up, because I really opened with them about everything. And they're just like, oh, so you don't believe in God now, huh? And like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, like, I need to know it. I need to know that it's true. Like everything in the Bible tells you that.
Sure.
And so I started going to a synagogue in Little Rock. Actually, I just love learning about new religions, and I started deep diving into different religions and what are the similarities.
Hmm.
Not that I was like a practicing Buddhist at any point or anything like that, like anything off the wall, but I just was really curious about other cultures because
Sure.
there's like a theme across the world. All the cultures have a religion and they're all kind of the same thing. And so anyways, roundabout, I've kind of found my way back, but I think that it's important for everyone to go through that phase where you can't just believe what the people around you believe. You have to
Totally.
know it for yourself. But anyways, yeah, I think it's annoying when your mom texts you and she's like, have the faith, you're gonna break through soon, when you're in that dark time. You're like,
Yeah.
shut up, mom, like you don't know what I'm going through right now. But of course she does, they both do. And afterwards you're like, wow, she was right. But in the moment you're like, gosh, mom, like stop sending me Bible verses, like stop trying to be incredible, like just be a
Yeah.
downer for one day, mom. But anyways, no,
That's
they're
awesome,
always
man.
really good at pulling me through stuff
Cool.
and taking care of me and guiding me down the right path. So
Yeah, dude, it sounds like you got some good parents, and
yep.
yeah, I totally know what you mean, man. I had definitely had that process myself too. I basically full on rejected it for a while, and then I went through some dark stuff, and but yeah, I did come back to it myself. So I do want to switch gears a little bit here, and I love all that stuff, but I do want to hear a little bit about, more specifically, your experience on this hunt.
Yeah.
So let's jump into that. But before we do, let me take a pee really quick. Sorry. I drank like 3 Ignites earlier.
I should probably go too. I've been drinking this coffee.
All right.
Ooh, right.
So we get to the trailhead, and you're using a lot of like borrowed gear and stuff, new gear,
Yep. Yep.
and I don't think you had packed quite enough food.
Oh my gosh, no. No. So yeah, I thankfully like I don't think a lot of people think about this like outside of like when you obviously you're getting ready to go on a hunt, like your first Western type hunting, like you start realizing how expensive it is just
Mm,
to be like just to have the gear to survive basically
yeah,
to do well. And it's an investment to get into that.
for
And
sure.
so thankfully, I mean, I had like the basics, like your basic survival stuff, like I borrowed binos. I borrowed a Stone Glacier bag, which I'm 100% getting a Stone Glacier bag. They inadvertently made the perfect camera bag because they have that pouch for a one of these spotting scopes to go
Yeah,
in, and then on the other side they've got like it's like made for a
they have a
tripod
little
spotting scope.
tripod thing. Yeah,
Yes, they inadvertently made the perfect camera bag to fit this lens and a tripod
your
in on
long
the outside
lens.
and have quick access. And
Yeah.
so I'm a big fan. I thought it was, and
Was it
I've gone through a lot.
Do you remember which pack it is?
Oh, I don't
Was it the
remember.
7900 or
No, it was like a
smaller?
like Sky something.
Sky
It
Guide.
was yeah.
Yeah,
And I borrowed that from Batham,
I
and it
got
was
that right
great.
there.
Okay, yeah. It was like perfect for the zoom lens setup. I never had a bag. Like usually I'm like, I don't like to, I think Brad and those guys are super rough on their gear.
Dude,
And
so
oh my
rough.
gosh, I'm
Like
trying to be
I couldn't
careful with
believe
mine.
it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
Like they're like throwing camera bodies around, like leaving them, like just throwing them in the dirt, like no lens cap. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
yeah. It's just a different world, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll just strap it on like underneath the brain of their bag. Like they'll put that flap down and just put the lens in there and just like run through brush. And I'm like, no. So like thankfully, like the Stone Glacier bag was perfect for me. And it was a really it's a minimalistic bag, but it's man, it is comfortable. I've gone through a lot of bags, and what I'm learning is like so I have a lot of like backpacking background, which like those REI guys,
Right.
those nerds, that kind of background, But what I'm realizing is like that, like all that gear, like you think in that world, like you're like, oh, this is premium gear. I think the most premium gear that you can get is in the hunting world, like because these guys, I mean, they're out 10, 20 days at a time. And it's rough. Like
Yeah.
it has to be comfortable to continue the duration of the hunt. So what
Yeah.
I'm learning is like all my backpacking gear is pretty much useless. Like I'm having to ditch it, sell it, and get hunting gear.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, borrowed the bag, borrowed a few other things, a puffy jacket, stuff like that. And but yeah, my food was not in order. I packed each day. I probably packed 1,200, 1,300
Oh
calories.
my God.
Yeah. And I mean, I can
That's
do
less
that
than I eat on like
feasibly.
a normal day. Like,
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's feasibly what I do. And I'm like fishing, backpacking, which also like I didn't take into consideration. Like usually I'm eating fish when I'm backpacking and
mm,
fishing. So that helps a lot. I mean, you eat two or three fish at night, like that's a big help. But I just didn't want to show up and be the guy that bought a Tinkara rod to the trail. And everyone's like, look at this guy gonna try to fish out here on a hunting trip. And then you all beat me up. So I didn't do that. But I wanted to. And we were at a perfect place. I mean, man, the water just looked so good for fishing. And I could have easily been pulling out 2,000 calories a night out of that water.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I was fine, just hiking around. But then when Lampers killed his bear, and y'all made a similar trek across the ravine. That was, and I have a video clip of it where I get done, and I'm just like, you can tell I'm done for.
Dude, it's brutal. It took us 8 hours. We shot our bear at noon, and we got back to camp with the meat at 8 p.m.
Oh my gosh, I need to ask them how long it took us, because it was not as long as I would have liked, because I was, oh man, I was struggling, and I was running off of, I had the Kodiak blueberry oatmeal packet and a package of beef jerky, and that's what I was running on that day for that trek.
Jeez.
And
it's like, so guys, if you're listening, it's, you go down a mountain, and I'm not talking about just like walking down a trail, like 45, 50 degree, like hands and knees, deadfall, gnarly stuff, like really thick brush, pack raft across the river, climb up, get your bear, go down another nasty, horrible mountain, pack raft again, and then go back up that horrible hands and knees steep mountain through deadfall with pack rafts and meat. And for me and Chiam camera gear, I also had a rifle. Me and Mark had like, and not, there was only 2 of us, so, and I, for some stupid reason, brought my rifle. So I was going, when I came back up, my pack was like 100 pounds at least on the way back up. So anyway, but I do want to hear the story of how that went down for you guys.
So Ryan was like just ready to kill a bear. Like he was ready, and it was in the right spot, right time. We were able to go down on this little perch, had a good shot, plenty of time to set up. He takes the shot, and then, of course I'm happy go lucky, like, I killed a bear. And then like they're like getting serious, like analyzing the terrain. And then I really start thinking about this, and I'm like, oh, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
And so we start going down, and the going down was fine. And we get up to the bear, and I think I had like 2 of the hams and some fat, and then all my gear. So thankfully we had 3 people to spread it out on. So we were doing a little bit better than you guys, having to double it up. But it started raining on our way down, and oh my gosh, I was just so scared, because I was slipping and sliding. So were those guys. Like we were just, I mean, it's what you got to do. I mean, thankfully, I remember a day when I was like, I'll never use a trekking pole in my life, and like looking at that now, like that, I don't know how people did it. Like I just have to assume that the Native Americans or whatever just cut sticks, because there's like, on that kind of terrain, there's just no way to do it without trekking poles.
It's like a requirement. Like I remember I broke a trekking pole on the second day. Luckily you guys did a meat run, and Ryan brought me an extra one back. But like, that's not like it's not like a extra item that's just kind of like helpful. It's like a requirement for this country.
Yeah. And I mean, in Texas, you break out a freaking trekking pole and people are going to laugh at you. But like here, like I didn't realize, like I'm starting to see a lot of these serious hunters and they're using them. And I'm like, maybe I should look into this. And like, now I know, like I will not go anywhere without trekking poles, point blank period. But anyways, that was my first time using the Treks the PEAX Backcountry Elite, and they were great. And I don't know how those things make it through a season with Lampers, because I put a GoPro on his, and like I'm watching back the footage. I don't know how I still have a GoPro, honestly. It looks like a different GoPro, because he was like tearing it through stuff, like dropping it on rocks. I'm like, I'm watching this back, and I'm like, well, at least it's a GoPro, I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, so we get up there to the meet, cut it down, and we're going back down. The rain is just awful. I'm just waiting for some part of my body to get impaled on some of this deadfall. Like these,
it's dangerous.
Oh, it is. That was my primary worry. And these guys, tall, lanky guys with long legs, and they're hopping over these huge logs. That's fine for them. When I get there, I'm having to like hug the log with all this weight and just like roll over, just hit the ground on my pack and then roll back over. And I'm just trying to keep up with these guys, you know. So I'm being more dangerous than I should be. And then I lose sight of them for a minute. So my pistol fell out of its holster and I had to go back up like probably 300 yards, and then come back down. And it was raining. I couldn't see tracks. So I lost them. I took a horrible line because I thought that I saw something down there and I thought it was them. It was not. I ended up like upriver from them and then having to cut back up and around and back down through a lot of deadfall. And then the moment that I get there, I wish someone would have been recording, but like I'm like smiling because I'm there and I'm like starting to come down and my shoelace gets caught on something and I just totally like face first. They just look at me and start laughing. And they're like, well, at least you made it. And I was like, man, that was probably the worst fall that I had. It happened to be like right at the beach. But anyway, so we got there and I piled in the raft with Brad, and I'm just trying to keep the weight of the meat in the center of the boat. And so using all my core strength. And I mean, every time he paddled, that boat felt like it was going to flip, that raft. I mean, it was every time, if I started to lean one direction, like I think that if I would have like lost the bag and it went, like we both would have went that direction. It was, I mean, two people on a one person raft pushing the weight limit with all the meat that we had in it.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
that was the first time I ever used the pack raft. And I think Mark, it was the first time he had too. And it wasn't like a crazy, like rushing torrent, but it wasn't nothing either. And like, it was a little nerve wracking, dude.
Yeah. It was nerve wracking for me because I'm facing Brad.
And you have no control.
Like, yeah, and I'm looking over the side of a backpack stuffed with meat like this, and I'm just seeing Brad's face get like serious, and you know he's paddling, and I'm like, I have no control over what happens, like, and I'm less nervous, like I feel confident. The waters weren't rough enough where I felt like I couldn't swim away and be fine, but I have camera gear like out because I'm trying to film, and then like as nice as those rafts are, one hole and they're like, oh, everything inside's waterproof. I'm like, yeah, until it's not, like until there's a hole in it. And I've got, you know, who knows how much money worth of camera gear in the tubes of that raft. So if we lose control, it pops, it's getting flooded, and then there goes my livelihood. Basically, I have to get all new gear. So that
you got insurance, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
but
good. Anyway,
insurance never works. I've had some nightmare stories with insurance. I just changed, but hopefully they're better. I've had them basically like not pay me. We were running a narrative film set, and had a AC assistant camera drop my what were we running with? I think it was like at the time I had a bigger Black Magic Ursa, and we dropped it into a creek, and it did not work after that. And
insurance didn't pay for it.
They paid like some kind of like accident fee, which was like a quarter of what the camera was worth, and I was just really upset about it. But anyways, so we get across, and then we're rolling up the rafts and everything, and I just look up at the top of where we need to be, and I'm thinking, good gosh. And Lampers and Brad both came over like, hey, like let me take a little bit of weight because you got camera gear or whatever. And I was like, no, I know this game. I know that as soon as I leave camp, you're gonna be like, so Kai, I'm like dropped weight and we had to take his stuff. So I was like, no, I'm doing every inch of this with the stuff that you gave me. And boy, did I regret that decision halfway up because those guys breeze through it. They're used to it. But I just remember at a point running on like 500 calories where I was moving my legs, and like my brain and my body like feels like the leg should be up and ready to take a step, and I would fall because my leg hadn't moved from the extended position. Like it felt like, you know, like the ghost syndrome when you have to amputate a leg or something. Like that's what it felt like. Cause I would look down, because I have to be real conscious of like the microphones on the camera when it's mounted to your carrying strap. And so like I'm watching my knee every step on my right knee, and I just remember like looking and like my brain's like move and my legs not moving.
No way.
And so yeah, I just have to sit down for a minute and stretch out my legs and just keep going. But that was the roughest I had it, and I was just lightheaded the whole time, just because of calorie intake. And not only that, I mean, like I'm just not used to that. My
Yeah.
calves and my quads have never done anything like that for that long. But I made it up to the top, and then I sit down, and they can tell. I mean, I'm like pale, like looking like I'm
Yeah.
sick. And I was like, "Do you guys have any snacks?" And they both start laughing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." And so they're like literally throwing, because I'm not getting up, and they're about to leave. They're literally throwing snacks at me, and I'm like,
Oh.
"Oh yes, like yes." And so they're like, "All right, we'll see you back at camp." And so I just sit there and I pig out like a fat kid on all these,
Yeah,
trail bars that they have. And that was what I needed, though. That was
for sure.
clutch. And so I remember that was like at the point where we shot, and there was like probably another 500 foot of elevation gain after that, and getting back up to that trail, it was my limit. Like for sure it was my limit, because I got back up there and I see the trail, so I get excited and I start moving faster, and I finally make it to the trail, and my knees were like physically knocking together,
Mm.
and just like shaky, and I'm like literally like using the trekking poles as canes. And that's how I got back to camp. I mean, it got better once you're on the trail and all
Yeah.
those muscles got a chance to breathe. But I took a video clip afterwards just saying like that's the most physically challenging thing that I think I've done to date. Like all the scenarios added up, like that
Yeah.
was that was pushing limits for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and it's like I I can't think of a day where I did more than that. I like it didn't see I was properly I had enough food, so I probably wasn't as bad as you were. I can't imagine doing that hungry. But yeah, I can't think of a day where I did more than that. So that sounds like it was kind of the hardest kind of moment for
Yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Where were you mentally, man? Were like, did you ever have, like doubts? Like, dude, can I do this? Like, is this gonna work out? Like, where were you mentally?
Uh, I don't. I've always just kind of had the mindset of it's gonna happen, and there were points where I was like, I'm gonna have to bang this out on my hands and knees. Like I'm not gonna be able to use my legs. I'm gonna be crawling, and like there was just no way in my mind that I wasn't gonna make it. Like my hands might be bloody. May have to take off my shoes. I may have to take it in twos. Like do my pack and half it and go up and then come back or rest or do it overnight or whatever. But there was not a point where I was going to let these guys see me not do it.
Right. Well, I mean,
So good peer pressure.
when you're like in that moment, when you're on the side of the mountain,
Yeah.
you really can't quit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
There's
not
no
like,
option
yeah,
really.
it's not like you can like get a helicopter out or something. I mean, you could,
Yeah.
um,
It's an
but did you
expensive way
ever,
out.
but did you ever, I remember after the first day I hunted with Dan in New Mexico, we did like 12 miles and like 4,000 feet up and down that day. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
it ended up being the hardest day of the whole hunt. But I remember laying in my tent that night and being like, dude, like, this is day one. If every day is like this, I don't know if I can do it. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had some serious doubts. I couldn't sleep. And I just remember thinking like, I was like, well, I know one thing, I'm not quitting. Like I'm not
Yeah.
quitting. So, but did you ever
Yeah.
have any of those moments where you were just like, dude, can I do this? Or like
I,
doubts?
I, I think I got fortunate in getting that day done with out the gate. Like that was like what, day three
Yeah, day
that we
two or
were out
three. Yeah.
there. Yeah. And so that was pretty quick. And then like everything else seemed mild after that.
Mm,
So I'm glad that we did that, got it over with. And I was mentally prepared to do that trip again. And that's what we thought we were gonna have to do. Like the whole time, like we went and pretty much like used all of our days looking for a bear that we wouldn't have to cross to
yeah.
go over again. Cause I think it was rough on those guys too. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
wouldn't know it like looking at them. They're a lot
It
more
doesn't
used
matter
to
who
it.
you are. That
That's
sucks.
that's a killer. That's a
Yeah.
killer jaunt to get a bear and haul it back. But I think everyone was trying to avoid shitting across that
Mm-hmm.
ravine again.
We were
And
too.
but then it wasn't looking good. Like it wasn't in the cards. So I was just mentally prepared to do that again. But yeah, I don't know. I was just so happy to be in the wilderness on a bear hunt, getting to be around these guys that, I mean, this is what they do and they're the best at it. And I was just happy to be there. There wasn't I told Lampers, I was like, I may be there 3 hours later, but I will be there.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of the mindset that I kept. There wasn't a doubt that I couldn't do it. But it was just going to be hard and I was going to be slower than those guys. But so, yeah, I think all of it, I just took it as a challenge, basically. Going up that hill, there was definitely points where I thought that like I might pass out and I might have to do the rest of this in the dark. I was just literally running on E, and there were times where I was up and I was weaving. And I mean, if you fall on that terrain, like you're
rolling
Dumpty all the way down to the bottom
until you get impaled on something.
Yeah, exactly. And so there were moments where I would like throw my poles and grab something because I felt like I was about to pass out, and then it kind of the wave passed, and I was like, all right, I'm good, and I kept going. So yeah, I think I was like, I'll take it in increments and I'll do it slow, but I'm gonna get there. And sure enough, I made it. But that was the toughest. And then once that was out of the way, everything else looked easy compared to that. So like mentally, I felt great after that. I was like, I've done the hardest thing. I may have to do it again. Everything else is cake. So yeah, I mean, after that, it was sunshine and rainbows for me.
Yeah.
Not literally. Man. It rained and snowed every day of that trip except one.
Yeah, it rained a lot, man. That was tough too, but yeah, man, dude, just attitude and mindset is so huge. I mean, not only in getting you through that, but also just, like nobody wants, it doesn't help anybody to have a whiner in camp or a complainer or, it's not good for you personally, and it's not good for your partners, and nobody's going to probably invite you back on another hunt if you're just bitching the whole time. So, and you always had a positive attitude and were cracking jokes. And, so I think that's huge, but I don't know. Do you think you'll, start doing any more physical training type prep stuff for the next trips? Or you think you just got this, just keep slamming the Taco Bell and just rock it out?
So me and Lampers talked about this a lot. We had a whole day under a tarp when it was raining, and we had this running joke about how Lampers on his calendar and his phone, he's got the day that I'm going to die of cardiac arrest because my veins are so clogged. And so he was
like the healthiest dude in the whole industry, and like you eating Taco Bell, like hanging out together.
Yeah. I also said that I was going to use his logo and everything and make like the slouchy hunter. And that was going to be my brand. And like, I was going to be sponsored by Taco Bell, but, no, I will say, Lampers, I'm sorry. The day that I got back, I got Taco Bell. It was just, we talked about it too much. And
I slammed so much bad food on my drive home. Like, I think I gained like 7 pounds on my drive home.
Driving, dude. If you have anything in the car, or like you just see the sign, like you see the Taco Bell at the McDonald's, you're like, and you just weave over there. It's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've already started doing a little bit more training. I think the one thing that I took away from running with these guys and Brad specifically, he was like, dude, screw working out. Like, if you want to do what we're doing, do what we're doing. Yeah. And he was like, throw a bunch of crap in your pack. He was like, go even get some concrete bags, put it in your bag, and then just start walking up stuff. Like, be stupid, like just walk straight up stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing that. And so it's probably more expensive than a gym membership right now with gas prices to drive to a trailhead. But I have a couple trails here near me, probably a 20-minute drive. And I've been doing that, trying to do that with the proper calorie intake this time.
That's important.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff around Bozeman that for me, I don't like hiking or running without a purpose. So I have to have something at the end. Like, I don't like to just do it. Like, if I'm going to be out in the woods, I don't like to just meander around the woods aimlessly, so a lot of these places, they have like small creeks that I can fish and then a lake at the end. So I'll kind of like push myself, do a overnight, fish the lake, and then come down. And that downhill, I think it's important to practice that downhill too, because that can get rough on your knees.
Dude.
That's tough. And I don't
I
think
hate
there's
the
any.
downhill more than the uphill. I think we were talking about it. For me,
Yeah.
downhill is worse because not necessarily physically, but it's actually like
Mhm.
mentally stressful going
Yes.
down
Oh yeah.
for like you're going down for like 30 minutes and you're just in high stress mode, like constant cortisone drip or whatever, because you're watching every step. There's deadfall. You're slipping. You're sliding. Brush is slapping
Yeah.
you in the eyeballs, and like if you trip, you're like
Yeah.
seriously in trouble.
A potential chance to die there if you
Yeah,
slip. Yeah,
it's that
and then
steep.
especially in the elements we were in with rain all the time and everything slick. I mean, I remember you
Yeah,
talking about I don't trust any log.
yeah.
Um,
Never step
and
on a log ever.
yeah, I learned that
It's
lesson
tempting.
too. Which yeah, there was one, and it's hard too. Like I don't know what kind of elven powers Lampers had, but he just stepped over this big like half log and like put both his feet on it and went over. And I was like, cool. Followed suit, just like banana peel, just bam. And he looked back and just looked at me and kept going. And I was like, how do you like? What is your
Yeah,
magic? You know. Um, but anyways, yeah, it's the downhill for sure. It's the constant pounding of your
yeah,
knees. You know,
yeah.
I can't imagine um, doing that. You know, being super overweight, the amount of
Mm-hmm.
pounding on your knees,
Extra.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, oh,
Yeah, so that's good. You got some hills around there. You can, and that's totally
yeah,
good advice. Like, unfortunately for me, I live on a coastal plain, so
yeah,
I have to recreate as best I can, and in the gym, and but yeah, I totally agree with what Brad's saying. If you have access to hills and stuff like that, and
yeah,
I can show you right over here. I got a big bag of 50-pound bag of play sand covered in duct tape that I throw in my
yeah.
pack, um, so, did you have any other? So, other than obviously for this kind of thing, you said big takeaways were like, packing the right amount of food.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
did you learn anything specific to filming that, like, because you are an experienced videographer, but hunting, I mean, filming in these conditions and these environments is like a whole different ball game. Did you learn anything specific about, I don't know, gear, your systems, or anything like that that you kind of figured out on this trip?
Yeah, I think I was kind of dialed because I've done shorter trips. I did archery elk last year. I've done a coastal island hunt in Alaska, and that was a long trip, and it constantly rained. I mean, a lot harder than it did on this trip. Um, I think everything is going to kind of stay the same for me gear wise, except for um, the gimbal head on a tripod that Brian Call and
Mm-hmm.
Brad used. There's just the fluid head is great for a lot of things, but with a zoom lens on it, it's just so shaky every time you
Yeah.
move it. So I think that's a change I'm gonna make.
Dude,
Um,
I found the exact same thing because I on this one brought like a nice I was like, I'm gonna try this like Benro, like a nicer fluid head.
yeah,
On that long lens, it doesn't, unless you have like a 50-pound fluid head or something, you are
yeah,
not using anything moving.
yeah,
You're not
nope,
making any moves like at all.
yeah,
So the name of the
yeah,
game is a head that adjusts quick, steady, and easy, and doesn't, like, when you lock it down,
right,
like drop an extra half an inch or something. So that's
yeah,
where that thing is crucial. I
oh,
found they're
yeah.
totally right about that.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, even a slight breeze to hitting that is
Mm-hmm.
such a lengthy lens, like the breadth of it that can take wind and shake is just
Yeah,
it's unusable, especially like you try to pan a little bit, like you're like, oh, I'm gonna make this a smooth pan, and you like really get down and
yeah,
dirty with it, and you're like, and it's like
it's not
you
possible.
can't even tell there's a bear there.
If you
It's
like
awful.
if you like go like this, it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the little the door spring things. Like as soon as you touch, like wow, wow, wow,
yeah, yeah.
like it's crazy. I think one other thing that I will pick up and steal from those guys is the Anchor solar charging system.
Oh
I've
yeah.
always just I don't think I have it handy, but
I remember you
Um,
saying like, yeah, just bring this guy and it's good to go for batteries and stuff.
yeah. I just take it's literally like I'm not exaggerating. It's like 7 pounds. Like it's the biggest V mount
Yeah.
battery that you can get. And those things are chunky. Now it charged my batteries every night for the whole trip, but getting into 7, 8 pounds for a
Hmm.
battery, like I would rather sacrifice that for the solar panels, and then just have like a little charger. Because after seeing that Anchor solar charger work in the conditions that we were in, constantly overcast, constantly raining, and
Yeah,
it was charging stuff, it's like, man, how have I not had this in my life?
it is pretty good.
Um, yeah. Other than that, I think my system's pretty dialed. I do want to check out the Sony microphones, um, just because the plug into the auxiliary port on the Sony's is just like I've had problems before with them coming out and making crackling sounds.
Yep.
Now, Brad said that the biggest reason they went to Sony is because the wind would literally
Hmm.
peak the audio so
Yep.
bad that on like a lot of people are using the furries, the little Rode NTG stuff. This is the newest, the NTG Video Pro
Hmm.
video mic or something, but it's got pass filters on it. So I think it's comparable and it's a lot tougher. I still have to, I want to do a side by side though, because this
Yeah.
is way cheaper and I beat the absolute crap out of this on this
Yeah.
trip. And those Sony mics, man, those plastic connectors are just, they scare
Yeah.
me. Like,
Yeah. I was running the Sony. I've already broken two of them.
mm,
One of them, I was actually surprised. I stepped on a rock in a creek and just like ate it, and
oof,
somehow it survived. I don't even know how. It was like
wow.
miraculous. But yeah, they are very breakable, the big ones. But then the little, I can't remember what it's called, but Brian and Brad had a
Yeah.
little one.
Yeah.
That one is money because it's just
Yeah.
the quality is still really good, but it's small and just not as bulky. I've had one of those on back order for like 4 months now. But
Really? I
yeah,
saw that they were on back order on B&H. Like that's the one that I want. But
yep, that's the
now I'm
one
going to
you
be
want.
4 months after you get yours. I'll get mine. So you can give me the scoop.
Well, it'll be interesting
Um,
to see whether I get my silencer first or my Sony microphone.
yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that's good, man. Yeah, those are some pieces I took away from those guys too. But I don't know what's any other takeaways.
Um, I feel like this was like the crappiest weather wise that it could have been.
Yeah,
Thankfully, I was able to borrow some gear. And I had Bass Ham's bigger than me. And so, like, everything that I had was like I was the Michelin man, you know. But I was just glad to have gear, you know.
yeah,
Like I said, a huge takeaway for me was like, you think you would think that like these backpackers and the backpacking brands would be legit, but when you compare them to the hunting world's equivalent, I mean, my bag, the biggest thing that I learned was my sleeping bag was horrible. I have a Mountain Hardwear, like Bishop Pass or something. It's rated at 15 degrees. It got 30, and I used every hand warmer I had that night just to try to stay warm. It was awful. It was the night we were like really high up, like we were on the top of the peak, and it just snowed all night. Uh, and it was just super cold. And I remember everyone downloaded movies on their phone, and I didn't have any movies. And I just remember like unzipping my tent, like to look at the snow. It's like piled up, and I look over there, and I kind of peek through Lamper's tent. He's watching a movie with his stove going, and I
yeah,
was just like
stove.
angry. I
Yeah,
was like, these guys living the life, and I'm over
yep.
here
Dude, that's a
shivering.
big one. Like I watched like an entire season of Better Call Saul one day. It was raining so
Oh
hard.
my gosh. Yeah, I that is a lesson I learned for sure. Like the rain, if it comes, like you need to have something to do. And so
Yeah,
I was like scrolling through videos and pictures on my camera. That was literally the only thing that I could do. It's
that's
like
terrible.
rewatching stuff. But yeah, definitely a new sleeping bag. I really like Lampers, the chill
Chill
coot or
coot.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just looked a lot better. And obviously I sleep really cold. But the crappy thing about my bag is the leg box is super narrow, and my knees literally, there's no way to like make my knees not touch
Ooh.
without pressing against the side of the bag.
Hmm.
And so like I have to keep my knees tucked, and then my crotch area is just like, because all that's touching, it's just on fire, and everything else, all my extremities are freezing. And so like I have to unzip because I was literally sweating through underwear in the
Oh
night
my
because
God.
like it was horrible. And so like I'm unzipping the sleeping bag, and then everything gets frozen, but I just have to air out the boys, like it was just so hot in there. And so it was horrible because it was like this horrible balance of I'm freezing, but at the same time my midsection is just on
Dude, I
fire.
literally saw on
uh,
Steve Ranello's Instagram like yesterday. It was a post. I think it was
Brad,
like a fake book. It was like, "How is my whole body cold, but my balls are still sweaty?" The
Brad
secret
sent me
behind
that.
sleeping
He
bags. Yeah.
commented on that and tagged me in it because we were talking about this, and I was like,
Yeah.
is there something physically wrong with me? Is it my sleeping bag? Like, what is wrong? Do you
Yeah.
guys have this issue?" And they're like, "Dude, that's weird, man." Because like I showed them, they didn't believe me. So the next morning I woke up and I this is gross. I'm not kidding you. I wrung out the underwear that I was wearing. Like I was sweating. I'm not kidding when I say I was sweating through underwear.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
dude.
it was just all in that leg box. Like there's no room at all in that leg box, and it's pushing everything
Yeah.
together. And you have to keep it together because if you press that down on the sides, you're taking away all the insulation power,
Yeah.
and so you're going to be cold. So then the outside of my legs are cold, inside's hot. Like it was miserable. So a big spacious sleeping bag, like bigger
Yeah.
than you think you need, is worth the bulkiness.
For sure.
That you'll have in your bag. So that was a big takeaway for me
For sure,
personally.
man. So yeah, man, what's next for you, dude?
I actually am gonna go out on my own bear hunt
Cool.
here pretty soon. I got a little gig in Nashville that I'm flying to next week. But I got a few places that I'm trying to narrow down where I want to go. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on Mark's e-scouting course
Mm-hmm.
at the Peaks headquarters, and I learned a lot from that. So I'm like going through the footage. So I got the benefit of a free class,
Yeah.
So I'm translating that, and I found some pretty sweet spots, I think. But there's no way to know until you really go out and try out all these
Sure.
theories. And Mark seems to know what he's talking about. So I feel pretty confident that I got some pretty good spots. I'm going to really have to work to get back in there, but it's my first hunt, willing to like abuse my body to get a bear. So
Yeah.
pretty excited. Trying to figure out scope options right now. The only thing that I've got is a Ruger M77 Mark II 30-06, and I'm running with it, man. Like
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to use. It still comes in, and I have a really heavy, just old metal like Simmons whitetail scope,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still under 8 pounds. It's that
Nice.
composite. So I mean, I'm just gonna have to make sacrifices weight wise, like
Yeah.
um, you know,
I mean, dude,
I,
that's not that heavy for, I mean,
no.
honestly.
I'd love it to be 6 pounds, but it is what it is. So I'm trying to dial in my scope right now for that. I don't know where I'm leaning. I've reached out to multiple people, but I got to get my scope dialed in, go out, get some shots, get it zeroed, and get a little bit more understanding because
Yeah.
I mean, like shots in Texas, people are like, "Here, I shot 100 yards," and all the old guys be like, "Wow, 100 yards, eh?" And they're taking crack shots easy at like 300, 400 yards, and
Yeah.
where I grew up, that's crazy. Like that's
Yeah.
like the sniper guy. But yeah, so bear hunt for me. I got a few other things coming up. I mean, continuing to work with Peaks and Lampers. I'm sure I'm going to be on some pretty wild adventures. I'm hoping to go to Zambia with Bass Hound to film one of
Cool.
his hunts there in Africa. So super stoked about that. Bass Hound's always a blast to be around.
Yeah.
So
This
it's
fall, you got
not going to
anything?
be.
You got anything lined up for the fall yet, or
Uh,
not set
yeah,
in
yeah.
stone yet?
With Peaks, I'll be doing some elk stuff with Bryce and Brandon, going and filming that stuff. So yeah, should be pretty busy. And then we got the Western Hunting Summit with Lampers.
Mm-hmm.
That if I don't know if the signups are full or not, but I love filming these events because I get to learn for free.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good stuff going on at the Western Hunting Summit that
sure.
Lampers and Peaks are putting on. So super stoked to be there. But yeah, I'm going to be pretty busy for the year, I
Yeah,
think.
dude. Well, that's awesome, man. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but it's been cool catching up, and I'm sure we could probably talk forever. And hopefully we'll be able to team up another hunt again.
Yeah,
But thanks
definitely.
for your time, man. Appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to
Yeah.
say, or actually let people know, where they can find you if they want to hit you up or see some of your
Uh,
stuff?
yeah, just Instagram pretty much is how we young people do things. So Chiam underscore films is where my personal stuff goes. And then if you follow Lampers at Stealthy Hunter or Peaks, you'll probably end up seeing some
Yeah.
of my work. So yeah.
And I'm sure that, well, definitely some of your stuff will be on this gritty series, since you and Brad were kind of with Ryan. I was with Mark. I'm working on some of that stuff now, but I'm sure that some of your stuff will probably end up, I'm assuming, in the series. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, dude, yeah, it was good catching up with you, man, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can talk again. And yeah, stay in touch, dude.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Hunter.
Yeah, man, good talking to you.
All right. See ya.